Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which is science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. The word mythology, you know why it was coined to deem all ancient histories as imaginary or not a real truth, fake, so that the so-called new religion guys can establish their version or their opinion about the world. So like when I say when India was inventing numbers, Europeans were in diapers. So this is how the narrative is. So now we are discovering that gradually we are proving scientifically, archaeologically, and I've written books and I'm traveling along with my books to prove what I said in my books. And you'll find that my theoretical information, I'm verifying it through my practical experience. So I have a very special guest. You loved her last show, and she's going to speak about certain things about the global affairs. She's a journalist with a major newspaper, international newspaper based out of India. So let us welcome editor Joyeeta Basu. Welcome.
Hello, thank you, Aditya, for inviting me for this show, and hello to everyone watching it.
So Joyeeta, some Americans are worried, but majority of Americans are not worried whether what happens to the relationship with the whole world. It's only
Mhm.
people who are worried are the people who watch any media. And 90% of Americans don't watch any media. They come, they just go. So if you look for that 10%, and purposely, specifically, we are very educated crowd. Now, they're worried that the USA is losing foothold over the world. And I don't understand what they mean by foothold. Because or they are realizing that America was the biggest bully in the world. I do not know that. So what is your view from your perspective? Because you study this day in and day out.
Well, first of all, when we are looking at what the US, I mean, how the world sees the US, if we are going to talk about it, first of all, I think the problem with all democracies, I would say, I mean, just as democracy is the best thing that has happened to the world, now there are certain problems also. The problem with democracies is that it can tend to, I mean, even the foreign policy, when it comes to foreign policy, it is not supposed to be partisan, but at the same time, sometimes what happens, the priorities change, and what we are witnessing primarily with the current administration, and that is a feeling that I would say is coming definitely from our part of the world. I would say Indian subcontinent. I don't like the use of the words, I mean, phrase South Asia, because I mean India is in itself is a subcontinent, if almost a continent size, if you're looking at it in terms of population. So from the Indian subcontinent, specifically from India, is that it seems like the focus where it should have been with the current administration with on China, because China is actually a serious problem in terms of, it is in terms of trying to rewrite the democratic order into a world with Chinese communist characteristics, and it is their avowed aim. If you look at whatever the Chinese have been talking about, they're only talking about it. The recent party congress also, for that matter, their focus, they're very clear about it. They want it to be rewritten in the Chinese way, and that is very bad for the world, because what we are looking at is an oppressive totalitarian regime. I mean, even if I do not bring the communism part into it, but even then the world's experience with communism has been very bad. So when you're looking at it, when that should be the focus has now shifted completely to, for example, Russia. I understand. I mean, it's of course, something that has happened, but at the same time, what the US, this current administration, is not realizing is that the longer this war continues, the longer kind of, at least a part of the West says, our avowed aim is not peace. Because you know what happened to the Pramila Jayapal letter, for that matter, Pramila Jayapal and the so called progressives in the Democratic Party. They wanted to some kind of a negotiated settlement with Putin so that the world is not pushed some kind towards some kind of a nuclear war. But what was the response to that? They had to retract that letter, say that, and make up some excuse saying that, oh, the letter had been sent off because of, it was not vetted and all. No one bought that. So when we are looking at a situation like that, what we are witnessing is that the focus is now, they're so focused on Russia that they are even refusing to acknowledge that this whole push, it suits China perfectly. Now the more you decide that we have to get rid of Putin, that more we are told that Putin is on the brink of defeat, which I really don't know whether it is happening or not. The more the Western, there's some kind of a group think that we see is happening in the Western world, where I don't think even, I would say, it's kind of a one-sided information flow that the US and the West is seeing about whatever is happening, because it's all political. So you see, I think they are losing sight of the fact to the actual danger. And China is a threat. China, it suits China perfectly that Russia is there as long as this war continues. And you see, the problem is coming in. So there is a feeling in the world that, at least definitely in India, there is a feeling that this is, everything they have decided, it has to be, the fulcrum is the Ukraine right now. If you look at it, their fulcrum, everything depends on it. Say, for example, how our neighborhood, they are kind of seeing it through the spectrum of Ukraine. So, for example, our neighboring country, India's neighbor, is Pakistan. Now, Pakistan was on the FATF grey list, Financial Action Task Force grey list for funding terrorism and money laundering related to terror. It is well known, including the US also knows. The US knows very well that Pakistan has been, I mean, it is one of the biggest perpetrators of terrorism in the world. Where was Osama bin Laden found? He was found right next to one of Pakistan Army's garrisons. Okay, so he was under the shelter of the Pakistan military. But in spite of that, in spite of Hillary Clinton saying, that, if you, but she had said about Pakistan that if you keep snakes in your backyard, sooner or later they are going to bite you. In spite of the fact there was an aid cut by Donald Trump when he was there, there was an aid cut and all, and they kind of, and then finally Pakistan also went into the FATF grey list because of its terrorism. But now what we are hearing is that Pakistan very smartly is being used, or rather, Pakistan has been very smart in allowing the passage of arms, some certain arms to Ukraine through Pakistan territory. And as a result of which, what is happening is that, and also Pakistan is now apparently offering some kind of space to US. I mean, it is allowing the use of its airspace to attack, say, I mean, some specific terrorist targets. Now, what are they getting in return? They have, number one, been taken out of the FATF grey list, and we know very well. We know very well that Pakistan has done nothing to control terrorism. Pakistan has also been given a $450 million maintenance package to maintain its F-16 under the, I would say, made up condition of, they have been told, I mean, when we had asked them that why did you do it, because you know that they are going to use the F-16 against us, and we are a major defense partner with the US, by the way, that that these F-16s will be used against India. They said, no, they're supposed to be used against terrorists. It's a different matter. And it's a different matter. All the terrorists in this region, they no longer live in the mountains and hills of Tora Bora. They have a country at their disposal. They have Afghanistan at their disposal. So you see, I mean, they live in urban areas. So who will Pakistan be bombing with these F-16s? Number one, it will be using them against India, and number two, it will be using against certain rebel groups that are there within its territory. So, and that is how they are using. So, what is happening is that when you and then think of the way the US left Afghanistan. leaving it to the mercy of basically the worst kind of terrorists possible, the Taliban. So the thing is, what is happening is, as a result of is that a lot of trust, especially the way the US left Afghanistan, okay, knowing very well the kind of, I mean, regime that controls Pakistan, knowing very well, and the way kind of they knew that this deal was going to fall apart completely. What happened at that time? A lot of trust was lost. So when you are looking, we are anyway unhappy. We are very unhappy with the way US is treating Pakistan, the way US is taking its eye off China, because you see, I am very positive about the US. I'm not at all negative about the US. I do not believe in that thing, I mean, okay, even if some people are going to, I mean, unlike what Aditya just said, also, whether the US power in terms of the world, I am very positive about the influence that US can have in terms of democracy, in terms of I'm a truly open society, a lot. And we also are a big democracy, by the way, huge actually. I mean, democracy is in our DNA. Don't go by all that nonsense that all these international agencies and all they talk about. A lot of stuff goes on over there. So you see, we can have a very good partnership, but at the same time, we are very wary about the way things are going. And it looks like, especially about, we are worried about what is happening with US and Pakistan. Because you see, if you are calling us a partner, then we have a problem with the fact that the way you are going about treating Pakistan, kind of letting it off all the hook. So you see, when there was a Pakistan was on the grey list of FATF, what had happened at that time was that terrorist activities and all, they had come down considerably. But just that there was a meeting of the United Nations Security Council counter-terror meeting happened in India just 2 days back. There, our foreign minister said that again, just ever since Pakistan has been taken out of the grey list a month or two back, again terrorist activities have started in this terror training camps and all, they have started in Pakistan. And you see, as a result of which, and this is one side of the problem for us specifically, and for the rest of the world, I think outside even Western countries, if you for that matter, if you see, and the world, wider world in general, they are getting a little upset about the way the Ukraine war is going. You see, this is why it gets very upsetting when someone like say, Pramila Jayapal and all, I don't even want to go into her record. I don't even want to go into what the I don't even want to go into, whatever the this progressive section of the Democratic Party they're talking about and all that. So I don't want to go into these things. What I want to say is that um, if we are going in a situation where the stated aim of an administration is to ensure the maximalist approach, when you have got that we have to ensure the defeat of Russia, we have to ensure the overthrow of Putin. Fine, you may have that approach. But the thing is that, do you think Russia will be defeated and quote unquote defeated, and Putin will be overthrown without taking down the West with with him? So why are we going into such a maximalist approach where you are creating a situation where the last Ukrainian has to fight, or rather, let me put it this way, the US and the UK in particular, I would say Boris Johnson, one of the, and see where it has landed the UK, insisting on war and not on peace. See, and they're in such a terrible situation that a so-called developed country, their one person out of seven does not has to skip a meal because they cannot afford to eat. Such is the situation, and winter is coming. Uh, just see the kind of anger and disruption that this whole energy crisis is going to cause in Europe in particular. No wonder they're so upset with America right now. So you see, when you can have a negotiated settlement for with a guy, okay, you are kind of calling him a villain, whatever, but just sit on the table, have talks with him and sort out the problem, instead of insisting that the West is basically the UK and the US in particular are fighting their war against Putin to the last Ukrainian. I am told, if I say this, apparently that's Russian propaganda. Sorry, if this is what Russian propaganda is, then the whole world is talking about it. And the worst part is, you see, this is not a war that concerns the most of the world. This is basically a local European war. I mean, I do not support the war. I do not support what Putin has done, but I have a problem. In fact, a lot of people, I would say most countries have a problem when such action and the counter reaction, what happens is that affecting a whole lot of people. And and it is affecting the global south, in fact, whole of Africa. If you're looking at the Asian continent in general, it is affecting everybody in terms of energy prices, shortage of fertilizers, so many things. We are all dealing with inflation, and the US is talking about increasing that Fed is increasing rates and all. It is going to cripple the world economy. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to satisfy the ego of a particular administration? Is it worth it to satisfy the ego? In fact, that prime minister is gone, right, Boris Johnson. You know, to satisfy the ego of Boris Johnson and Joe Biden, is it worth it to push the world towards so much uncertainty? I'm not even going into nuclear war because that is too scary a prospect to even think about it. I'm just talking about the day to day difficulties. I mean, life has become so difficult for a large section of Europe. Protests are taking place. I don't know how much of that news reaches the US, but there are protests happening in Czech. There are protests happening in France. People are out on the streets. They are unhappy. Wake up. You know, what is going on? How long will this war continue? And it's all like, as if it's an existential crisis. You are making it into an existential crisis. Sit down on the table, talk to him. Because you see, as I said, it is not going to be possible to have some kind of a, do not think in terms of things like, Ukraine will be able to recover territory, say from to pre 2014 level. It is not going to happen, because you see, so be practical, be pragmatic. So as a result of which, the US, and in the meanwhile, what are you doing? China is kind of, you're letting China win. You are letting China, which has the openly declared that it wants the world to be, turned into some kind of authoritarian, some kind of a jail. That is what they are. It is going around gobbling up assets because people are too debt ridden. The value of the dollar is too high. So as a result of it, they are not being able to repay Chinese debts, and China is going around gobbling up assets in all the countries. Wherever it has invested with the BRI, Belt and Road. So what is going on? This is the time for peace. You cannot have a war. Sit down, negotiate, find a route, find a way out. And we are told that yes, even Zelensky was ready to have some sort of a negotiated settlement, but apparently Boris Johnson and Biden said no. This is going to be an indefinite war. Now, where is Boris Johnson now? I would like to know where Joe Biden will be. Also, I don't know what the US midterm elections will be, but from whatever report I am getting, that Biden is not, it is not that Biden is, even if he wins, I don't know what is going to happen. I mean, people in the US will know better, obviously. So from whatever little bit that I am reading, it seems like even Biden is not in a very good position. And it is the same with all the European leaders. I mean, in trying to remove Putin, all of them will lose their chair. Is that what we want? Yes, Aditya.
No, you made a very logical, passionate point here. So one question which usually comes in it's like the American leadership in the world, and people usually go back to the Reagan era. People usually go back to the Carter era. Carter is the one who started the American love with the Chinese, and we all know. So so when we talk about, you made very logical points on how the world thinks about it, but most of the Americans don't think about it. Americans generally viewpoint, the State Department viewpoint is that if something doesn't work as per their plans, then put sanctions on those countries. Like recently, for the example, Ethiopia. very small country. Now, if you ask an American policymaker, what if Mexico becomes an ally of Russia and the nuclear missiles are put in Mexico? Not even Cuba, Mexico. And this is exactly what happened in Ukraine. This is what exactly happened in Pakistan against India. This is exactly what is happening in Taiwan against China. All these places, Americans are involved. Now, so the answer to that question, if Mexico becomes armed with nuclear weapons to fight with USA, then what happens? So these questions are not answered or brushed aside because general viewpoint is we are the most richest country in the world. We have the most strongest economy. Our dollar is accepted all over the world. So I don't think so anybody can do. If something happens, it will wage a war. War is very high on the American politicians' mind, and you they may say whatever they want to say, but this is on the top of their mind. So how will you or India is so weak as compared to America, how do you see that that kind of mindset you cannot challenge? It is not going to happen. So China, what China has done is has learned from American policies and are playing it on them much better than they could play on China or anyone else in the world. China is exactly copying what Americans did in 80s and 70s. So how where will India stand in that all these things?
Well, first of all, let me ask one pertinent question. When we are looking at, UK, you are saying it talks about war, always war. The thing is that slightly when you're talking about US leadership of the world, many of us in the world, we do not have any problem with the US leadership for the world. Okay, because we know that we may be able to give leadership to be maybe what we are trying right now. India is trying to be leader of the global south. If you look, I mean, that is what we keep hearing from our diplomats and all, that it seems like that no one is listening to the smaller countries. It is they're only bothered about Ukraine. That is the only thing that what the West, in particular the UK, US, is bothered about. So when it comes to that huge part of the world, they need a lot of help. When we are talking about the global south, we are talking about poverty ridden countries. There are lots of people over there, so they need a voice. So they are coming to us. It's a fact. Because China is also a problem. It's a malign power, because China, everything is transactional, and moreover, wherever China takes an entry, it will come with maybe aid or help or something, but sooner or later, strategic angle comes into it, and China shows its real face, and it kind of gets into, and countries fall into the debt trap. Their economy goes belly up. It has been happening in, say, Sri Lanka. It's happening. If Pakistan is on its way towards that, because China is kind of funding it in a major way. So you don't have those burdens when you're talking to us. There's nothing like that. We don't do these things. Simple as that. And of course, we want to be influential. We have our voices there. We want to do business with them, but we are not a malign power. It comes with our philosophy. It really helps that majority of this country and our heritage, our history has been such that we are not conquerors. All right, you will not find Indians going around conquering countries by the sword and all. We have not done that. We don't have that history. As a result of which, when you're looking at that, but at the same time, we don't have a problem, or perhaps because of the way we are a much softer power, but militarily we are very strong. When I'm saying softer, I'm talking about our worldview. Okay, so if we don't have a problem if the US takes a lead. Now, what we are looking at is that is a strong partnership. Is a strong partnership that is beneficial for the US and beneficial for us. And it's also our policies in terms of neighborhood first. We do not think it's in our interest if our neighborhood implodes. One of the reasons why we kind of literally have been propping up Sri Lanka, for that matter, but things have been going totally, I mean, we have been kind of, I think $4 5 billion we have just given to them. aid, etc., etc. When that country was falling apart, we really helped them. We have set up pumps over there for fuel, this, that. China, which has been building its BRI stuff in that country, I think gave around 30 million or something like that. So China has not been doing anything. We are really helping our neighborhood. So, but you see, we cannot do it on our own. If you want China, we understand the China problem very well. So the problem is, when you are looking at the US, we don't have any problem in the US taking the lead. Okay. And we are not even going to call it a hegemon. But yes, if you start meddling with our issues, if you start do not understand what is going on, or willfully decide that you are not going to look at it, I am not even going into things like, the US is a power that wants to go into a war. I don't see it like that. I would rather see it as maybe the US arms companies and all, they like the fact of this war continues. But you see, when this kind of an attitude comes in, where you are talking to, say, for example, Pakistan, you have been able to, Pakistan is a bankrupt country, by the way. Pakistan's total economy size, as a big country. Pakistan is not a small country, it's a huge country. Its economy, the size of its GDP is the size of the GDP of Mumbai, which is a city. Okay, Pakistan's GDP is slightly bigger than the GDP of one of our cities, the commercial capital of India. So there also US is making money. And the whole point is that now that is happening, but at least the US is getting some money in return from Pakistan. Now, when you are looking at US and Ukraine, what are you getting? The American arms companies, it's the American taxpayer that are who are funding this war. And think of the kind of weapons that you are supplying to Ukraine, okay, which the cost is being borne by the US government, and obviously that means the US American taxpayer. Look at the money that you are kind of funding them with, and in return, what are you getting? And more importantly, you don't even have any accountability of which way how these defense equipment are being used. So if you ask me, the US has got into a lose-lose situation, in spite of what Aditya talked about. We are always ready with arms and all that. It is only the arms companies that are making some money. It is the American taxpayer who is losing. So how is that it's a very lose-lose situation for the US, even in terms of money. At the same time, this is where the distrust comes in. The same arms that you are giving to Ukraine for free, if we have to buy that, we have to pay top dollar. Same with Taiwan, which is facing an existential threat from China. Okay, and they will also have to buy huge amount of money. I mean, they will also have to spend a huge amount of money over there. So if you are talking in terms of, I do not know, because I have not interacted with US congressmen or US senators, so I really do not know what exactly, whether they are all wanting this war or not. But the fact of the matter is that yes, the American defense companies may be very happy, but at the same time, the cost is being borne by the American taxpayer, number one, of funding this war. At least, in other words, America makes some money out of it. In this war, is it making the money? I don't think so, except for some big corporations. And you are making a lot of people in the world unhappy. That is what is going on.
You know, you make a very sensible thing, and it will sound music to the ears to the most of the American policymakers, that India is not looking for world leadership because they want the leadership to be of the America. Because they really look for, if they can control the dollar, they can control the economy, they can control the countries.
Yeah. Can I make a quick point here?
Sure.
Yeah, you see, we would rather have America as the world leader than China. But if we are talking about the American dollar, how long will the American dollar stay strong? Because it is China that is undercutting it in such a bad way that, the more, ultimately, China is trying to build an economic system, a financial system where the dollar doesn't matter. De-dollarization process has already started. And the more they try to make the dollar stronger, the bigger the problem it becomes for the rest of the world. So in terms of the US trying to strengthen itself, it is destroying the rest of the world, and that is where the problem is coming. At the same time, it is conceding ground to China, because where is this world going to turn to? We will not, I hope not. This is a problem with parties. I mean, democracies, you don't know what regime change, one government comes, another government goes, which way things go. But right now, Indians have a major problem with China, so nobody would dare to even you know give a hand of friendship to China, offer a hand of friendship to China. But the rest of the world, as they sink into an economic modus, they will be turning to China. So what happens to American leadership then?
That's an important question because this is what the Americans need to listen. American policymakers, not Americans. Americans, they love India. Most of the Americans they have no problem with India. But the political leadership is different than American people. Now, one question comes in the mind in the, for example, the State Department. State Department has always been run by academic, what you call appointees with 23 or 24-year-old lack of experience, significant lack of experience. The mental makeup of most of these people who join the State Department at the assistant deputy secretary or a little lower than that, it comes from the American textbooks. Most of the mindset where they know that the American aircraft carrier standing in the nearby ocean is going to control or scare the people into submitting to American arms. American arms, American pharma, and the three things, American oil. These three are considered the national security topics in most of the American policymakers. Now, American arms means the more people buy American arms, the more they can put sanctions on. The more people buy American pharma, the more sanctions can come on. The more people get American aid, then the more sanctions can be put in the name of human rights. So they've used all these three strengths of USA into leverages. Leverages means that you can pull a lever, press a lever, and you can get a favorable outcome out. And the most favorable outcome is opening the markets where the American large corporations can flood their goods. That's what it is. Like, for example, Amazon. Amazon is in India as well. Large American corporation where the main profits go to the American government. And it's a funny thing that Jeff Bezos doesn't pay a tax, $0. So they don't earn anything from Amazon much. But from the Lockheed Martins, Raytheon, and other things, they earn a lot of money. So India being trying to be a global leader of the global south or not challenging America, don't you think it's a negative position for India? China is challenging America, but he's getting all the favorable deals from the US administration.
Well, I think China, I mean, when you're talking about China challenging the US, does the US realize the danger of losing its, premier number one policy? I mean, being the leader of the world number one superpower, it is under threat, because China wants that, and China wants that position, and they're clear about it. It is written in. They have even talked about it. They have written it. That is what they're aiming for, even in terms of economy. I mean, China is growing very fast. So how long will the US continue to be in denial of the threat that China poses, and instead pursue basically what should have been a localized war, and shift their eyes away completely from China? So you see, when you are looking at US and India relationship, we value it greatly. We greatly value it, but at the same time, it becomes a problem for us. Say, for example, what has the US done? The US has made it difficult for Indians to get visa. Okay, you must be knowing, Aditya, what has been happening. For an Indian, until recently, I would say there's been a lot of uproar over that. You have imposed conditions. You say that we don't have enough people, which nobody believes, by the way. For an Indian to get a general visa, tourist visa or whatever it is called, to the US, To get a visa appointment, one has to wait around 880 days, 880 days, close to 900 days. So we are looking at things like, 2.5 years appointment to get a visa appointment. You know how much the Chinese have to wait for that? 3 days. So, and here India is a huge market, by the way. And China is not allowing the US an entry into its market. Okay, here India is a huge market. Here the American corporations are doing a lot of business. We have a burgeoning trade. I think US and India's biggest trade partner is the US, and we are also buying a lot of defense stuff from them. But just because we have taken a neutral position of the Ukraine in the Ukraine war, in the earlier program that I was here, I had also explained why we have a historical baggage, I would say, when it comes to Russia, and a lot of our inventory is with military inventory is Russian in origin, and as a result of which there's a lot of maintenance stuff involved, because of which we have to be in a good relationship with Russia. Just because we were not willing to come out and say, we were saying that we are neutral, we want peace, and just because we were not joining the bandwagon and saying, oh, Putin must be overthrown, throw out Putin, just because of the middle path we took, just because we were centrist that way, I mean, you are quote unquote giving us some sort of sanctions. That is what we are looking at as. But at the same time, what is happening is that this visa thing is some kind of a sanction by stealth. Okay. And we were told one particular US official was here and she went back when she could not make India bend to her will, actually. She went back, and this whole process of delaying visas to Indians started. So it was sanctions by stealth. Now, when you are looking at a situation like that, who are the people who are suffering? Okay, the people who are suffering are the common people, and that is why sanctions never work on any government. If you are not, if Russia was not sanctioned, you see, Russia, Vladimir Putin has been getting sanctioned, and after sanction and all, where did Vladimir Putin go? Which way did Vladimir Putin turn? Vladimir Putin turned towards China. You pushed Russia into the lap of China. Now China controls, literally nearly controls the Russian economy. Uh, China is Russia's biggest trade partner. I had done some research up to 2018. I had worked on it. I saw that 15 to 20% of Russian trade is with China. China is launching a 5G over there in Russia. Manufacturing is coming under China's control. But China, there's a huge swath of the Han population of Chinese. They're settling in Russia's northern areas. So you see, what you have done, you have gifted Russia to China on a platter. Okay, and all that needed to be done was that, you see, you have not been able to hurt Putin even an iota. Even now, you have not been able to hurt Putin an iota. We are still hearing about things like, okay, Putin is being defeated. If he was being defeated, why isn't the war over? Why is the war still continuing? You're not being able to hurt Putin. You've sanctioned him. And who are the people who are suffering? It's the common people. It's always the people who suffer and never the rulers. Okay, so that is why sanctions are a bad policy. You cannot, what you can do with diplomacy, you can do with sweet words. You do not go there with a big stick and try to uh, tame everyone like that. If you try to do that to India, if he tries to they kind of try to give us any sanctions for, India is a very proud country. There's going to be, and it's a democracy, there's going to be such a public backlash that will be the end of India-US relations. So approach, do not try to put pressure on us. Do not try to put pressure on the world. Be aware, be sensitive to people's needs and all that. I think that is what a truly great power is about. You do not going around threatening people, and that definitely, I would say, is a problem with the US. And I think and the minute it does not suit them, you are doing business with terrorist funders like Pakistan. You are doing business with any autocratic regime you're willing to do business with, and they all become good in your books. That is a problem.
Ethics and morality play very little role in State Department in the US. Very little role. So when they go by the IMF reports, who holds the maximum US debt? That country is important. China holds the maximum US debt. Therefore, China will always be important for Americans over anybody else. China, Japan, UK. These three countries are the top holders of the US debt, dollar debt. So, like they maintain the foreign reserves in dollars. So, anyone who is holding the maximum dollars, like give you one example, in last 8 months, Vietnam offloaded $39 billion, almost $39 billion, and they are now down to just 36 or 26 now. So now the US is trying to approach Vietnam, increase your dollar reserves. Okay. So the more you hold US debt, the more you're important for them. China will never lose importance in the eyes of US because it's like India. If somebody is investing a lot of money in India, India will never go to war with them because it is important for them. The morality and ethics play a secondary role after that because you cannot fight with them because they're holding you're selling to them. So the number one thing which the US sells all over the world is the US dollar, nothing else. Everything else is secondary. So like will the do the US Indian policymakers, on the morality side, ethics side, what you're saying is makes a very good sense. But on the financial side doesn't make sense for the Americans. For Americans, it works as if you hold the US dollar as a debt sovereign currency, if you trade in US sovereign currency, that means makes more money for them. So the entire demand of dollar is based on its usage. So how do you see, like, from remove emotions, remove morality, remove ethics? Now we are talking straight numbers and what makes the US rich. I mean, so far, the biggest FDI destination in the whole world is the United States. United States attracts a maximum wealth from all over the world. It's a country size of Uttar Pradesh right now in population. So what do you say on that?
Um, Again, I'm going to say the thing is that as long as the US is not going out to hurt other countries purposefully, nobody has a problem with the US. Okay, nobody has a problem. But the problem is that in trying to do this, in trying to give a free pass to China, what the US is doing is that US is opening itself up to attacks from China, because you see the whole point is that US may not want to go to war with China, but maybe China wants to go to war with the US. Maybe China is already at war with the US. There is this theory, not theory, it is happening in practice. What China is doing now, it's 24/7 political, 24/7 warfare China is conducting against the free world, against the world. There's this political warfare that is going on. There are these influence peddling that is happening. They have infiltrated every segment of society in terms of, especially, I would say, the academia, when it comes to government, military, they're infiltrating every section. So when instead of putting up a resistance to that, China will eat up democracies from inside. As it has been said, China will use the institutions that democracies have, and to basically use those institutions to work against democracies. If the US does not realize that, how long do you think dollar will be the primary number one currency in the world? Because you see, as I'm saying, shift has started. The more the value of the dollar goes up and all, what is happening is that because of it, their countries are not being able to repay their debt to China, the countries that are part of the BRI in particular. So China is gobbling up their assets. So the more the US goes around with a stick, at the same time, what is happening is that finally and gradually, not gradually, they're doing it pretty fast, I would say. The US is conceding ground to the Chinese. Okay, so what is happening? We are looking at a world where the Chinese are pushing the world towards de-dollarization. What we are witnessing right now may work for some time just for the US, but when the rest of the world, when the economy of the rest of the world disappears, who will be, I mean, is decimated, who will be doing business with the US? Where will the US be doing business with? Think of the way, that is what I'm saying. Think of what is, look at what is happening in Europe, look at the situation in UK. They don't even have, as I said, they don't even have money for food. Okay, look at how many prime ministers they change. Look at what has happened in the US. I mean, their foreign reserves are gone. So the whole thing is, you see, if you have to be a leader, you have to be a leader. Okay, you cannot be a leader by destroying the rest of the world, because then the rest of the world will try and go another way, and it is already going, and that is the problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Joyita, so much for coming on the show and expressing yourself so freely. And it's all about the grand economy. And for the viewers, you should know you can check her articles, and she appears in many TV shows, especially NewsX and her own channel. And follow her and let us know your feedback about this discussion. And I hope you love it because she brings the passion as well as her knowledge. She's just as a journalist. So thank you, Joyita, for doing the show today, and thank you for all the viewers for your time. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya, and thank you everyone for watching.